evidence unseen. If you break a bone, you ask for an x-ray. You want evidence, you want proof. But somewhere along the road, the world told us that faith lives on an island far away from reason, yet scripture whispers otherwise. It's not the absence of evidence. It's evidence, remember.
When I sit in a chair, I believe it will stand. When I sow in the field, I expect harvest in my hand. Every sunrise declares what the night could not see, and every promise of God still speaks eternity. Adam carried memories
of Eden's holy light, the sound of footsteps walking with the Maker in the night. From generation to generation, truth traveled through the years, not by myth or imagination, but testimony through tears. The God who spoke the stars alive has never failed his word. History becomes the witness, and faith has heard. Faith is the title deed.
If you go to a doctor with a broken arm, you expect to see an x-ray, right?
Oh, absolutely. You want actual proof.
Yeah, exactly. You want clean, visible lines on a screen showing you exactly where the fracture is.
Right.
I mean, you want proof before you let anyone put a cast on you.
Right. Nobody just takes a guess with a broken bone.
But when you hear the word faith today, society basically tells you to throw the x-ray machine out the window. For most of us, the modern concept of faith is just this idea of a blind leap in the dark.
Yeah, it's framed as just closing your eyes, crossing your fingers, and just stepping off a cliff, hoping something catches you.
It's pitched as a purely emotional wish.
It is, and honestly, it's almost positioned as the direct enemy of logic. Like, the cultural narrative tells you that you have science, reason, and empirical data on one side of the room, and then you have faith sitting on this entirely different, irrational island.
Which is crazy when you really think about it.
It is. I mean, it might be a comforting thought for some people, but it fundamentally assumes that faith is just floating in the ether, like it's completely disconnected from any hard, observable reality.
Well, today, our mission is to completely shatter that modern myth.
Yeah.
We are pulling from an absolutely profound, paradigm-shifting masterclass by Indui.
Yes, the Chief Learning Officer of icomm.CLASSROOM Teaching Ministry USA.
Right. And his research session is called Storytelling Faithfuls, Faith That Acts. And over the next few minutes, we're going to explore the structural original Greek language of Hebrews 11.
Which is fascinating on its own.
It really is. And we are also going to map out some shocking hidden timelines in Genesis 5 that will completely reframe how you view ancient history.
Yeah, this is one of those deep dives that doesn't just give you, new trivia for a dinner party. The insights in Induik's material challenge the very architecture of how we make decisions.
Let's start with how he disrupts the whole premise of blind faith.
Right, so he points out that human beings naturally live by logic-driven faith every single day of our lives. It is literally the core operating system of humanity.
Let's look at how that actually plays out for you and me. When you sit down in a chair, you are exercising faith that the four legs beneath you won't snap.
Right.
When you push the start button in your car, you expect the engine to ignite based on an unseen mechanical process.
Yeah, or when you go to work all month, Monday through Friday, you expend energy expecting an unseen paycheck at the end of the month.
Exactly. You don't see the money deposited in your account yet, but you act anyway.
Because we don't walk around in a state of paralyzing skepticism, constantly interrogating whether the chair is like a holographic illusion. We act. We move forward based on assumptions.
But I do have to push back on that framework a little bit, just playing devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Isn't everyday faith like trusting a chair or your car's ignition? Isn't that just applied science? Or just basic human habit? Because You trust the chair because you have the physical evidence of thousands of past chairs holding you up. You have a documented track record of chairs working. Calling that faith feels like we are stretching the definition to fit a religious concept.
That is a completely fair critique, and honestly, it sounds like a secular argument against religion. But rather than that invalidating biblical faith, the original writers of these texts would actually agree with your premise.
Wait, really? They would agree?
Yes. They argue that spiritual faith operates on that exact same empirical demand for a track record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, biblical faith isn't a floating emotion devoid of science. It is a highly rational, calculated response grounded entirely in the historical evidence of divine action. You trust the chair because of past evidence, right? True faith operates on that exact same logic.
Okay, so if faith isn't blind, then the authors of these ancient texts must have used very specific words to describe what it actually is.
They absolutely did.
Let's look at how Induik deconstructs the linguistic structure of Hebrews 11.1. Because if you look at different translations, you see this tension right away.
Right, the wording is so deliberate.
The New American Standard Bible translates the verse as, faith being the certainty of things hoped for, a proof of things not seen. But the King James Version calls it the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
And the vocabulary there is vital. Certainty, proof, substance, evidence.
Yeah, those are heavy words.
Exactly. These are not words of whimsical, wishful thinking. These are words meant to demonstrate hard, objective reality. I mean, the invisible nature of a future promise doesn't mean there's an absence of present evidence.
We have to dive into the original Greek word for substance used in that verse, which is hypostasis.
Hypostasis, yeah.
And this is where the blind faith myth starts to really fall apart, because hypostasis isn't a philosophical concept. It literally translates to that which stands under.
Right, it refers to a literal concrete substrate.
So think of the rebar and poured concrete foundation upon which a massive skyscraper is constructed.
And the historical context of that word makes it even more tangible. When Endu brought this up, my jaw dropped.
Oh, the archaeology stuff, yes.
Yeah. To understand how a first-century reader would have understood hypostasis, he points to the Oxyrhynchus papyri.
If you aren't familiar with that, listeners, in the late 19th century, archaeologists essentially dug up an ancient, massive garbage dump in Egypt.
A literal garbage dump.
Yeah, and they discovered thousands of everyday secular documents, receipts, letters, and legal contracts from the Greco-Roman period.
And here's the kicker. In those everyday legal documents, the word hypostasis was used strictly as legal property language.
Right.
It was a literal term for a title deed.
Oh, man. Hearing that legal definition changes the entire landscape of the text.
It completely flips it. Think about the implications for how you view belief. Faith is holding the legal proof of ownership to a property you haven't physically stepped onto yet.
Like buying a house sight unseen.
Exactly. If you buy a house on the other side of the country, you might not have the physical keys in your pocket, and you might not have walked through the front door. But if you hold the hypostasis, that title deed, that house is legally yours.
It is a tangible legal guarantee of an unseen reality.
Yeah. Yes.
But then we hit the second critical Greek word in that verse, evidence, or electios.
Electios, right. And this brings us straight into intense courtroom vocabulary.
Forensic stuff.
Exactly. It means forensic evidence that is marshaled to demonstrate a case beyond any reasonable dispute. It is the physical exhibit file that makes a prosecuting attorney's argument undeniable.
So it's not just a feeling.
Not at all, but more than that, it implies a rigorous cross-examination. Like, it describes a truth that has been refined in the fire of questioning and interrogation, and it emerges stronger precisely because it was challenged.
Wow.
It produces an undeniable conviction that forces a jury to render a verdict.
But hold on, let that sink in for a second. This creates a massive legal paradox, doesn't it?
How so?
How can you possibly have forensic evidence or a physical title deed for something that is entirely invisible? I mean, you can't put an unseen religious promise into an evidence bag and present it to a judge. We need an unbroken historical record to make that work.
And that points us to the exact place the writer of Hebrews sends the reader. To answer that paradox, we have to look at the historical track record of the very first human beings.
Right.
We have to look at the data they passed down.
Induik poses a mind-bending question to his masterclass students that frames this perfectly. He asks, what did Adam tell 7 generations of his family line?
If you are multitasking right now, like maybe driving or doing the dishes, I want you to pause and really think about that question. It completely reorients how we read the ancient texts.
Because we are so conditioned to read Genesis 5 as a boring genealogy.
It's a dusty list of names, yeah.
This guy lived, had a kid, and died. We skip right over it. But if you actually plot the numbers, it is a stunning timeline of living memory.
Let's map out this chronological overlap. Because Adam wasn't some distant mythical figure to the ancient world who existed in a vacuum.
No, according to the text, Adam lived for 930 years. He was a pre-fall contemporary.
He was a living, breathing library of uncorrupted reality.
And when you put their lifespans on a graph, the overlap is staggering. Adam didn't just have his son Seth and then pass away.
No, Adam sat across the dinner table from Seth and Enosh.
And Kenan, Mahalo, Jared.
Enoch,
Yeah.
Methuselah, and even Lamech, who is Noah's father.
The math actually shows that Lamech was 56 years old when Adam finally died.
Which is wild. We tend to picture the ancient world operating like a giant game of telephone.
Right, a story starts at one end of the line, gets whispered down through hundreds of people over centuries, and by the time it reaches the end, it's completely corrupted and changed.
Exactly. But this timeline proves it wasn't telephone. This is a master data drive directly downloading to the next generation.
7 subsequent generations didn't have to guess what happened at the beginning of the world. They could literally walk up to the source and ask him.
And we have to consider the visceral sensory memories Adam passed down to them. He wasn't handing them a scroll of abstract theology. He was giving them raw, lived trauma and rescue data.
The real lived experience.
Yes. He told them about the literal sound of walking with the Creator in the cool of the day, the awe of naming the animals, the shock of waking up to see the creation of Eve.
But he also had to carry the weight of explaining the catastrophic failure.
He did. He had to look his great-great-great-grandsons in the eye and tell them about the shining serpent, the Nakash.
Man.
He had to explain the moment he stood there passively and watched the deception happen. He described how the ecosystem literally fractured, like how thorns and thistles physically erupted from the earth as a curse.
And crucially, he passed down the mechanism of the very first substitutionary sacrifice.
This is the anchor of the historical data right here. Human rebellion brought the consequence of death, but instead of Adam and Eve dying instantly, God instituted a system where an innocent life was given in their place. Adam had to describe watching God take the life of an animal to physically make them garments of skin.
God literally covered their shame with his own hands.
That is sensory data. That is the smell of the first sacrifice.
So Adam's core message to those 7 generations was unambiguous. The Creator is incredibly generous, but he's also deeply serious about his word. He punishes disobedience, but he desperately wants to rescue lost humanity.
When we talk about faith for these ancient patriarchs, it was not blind. It was anchored by a concrete, unbroken chain of eyewitness memory.
They had an objective standard of truth sitting right in front of them.
Exactly.
And when you are handed that much undeniable historical forensic evidence, when you have the electos, the courtroom proof, it forces a verdict.
Evidence demands a response.
Right. This massive repository of evidence is what triggered radical movement in the ancient world. Let's look at Noah as the prime example of this.
Yeah, because modern retellings often paint Noah as this isolated, eccentric guy just hearing voices in the sky. But the timeline changes everything.
Noah was born just 126 years after Adam's death.
Adam's memory was still entirely fresh in the collective consciousness. Noah knew the Creator's character directly through his grandfather, Methuselah, and his father, Lamech.
Lamech actually prophesied comfort over Noah when he was born, specifically referencing the cursed ground. And Lamech knew about the curse because he heard about it from the men who heard it directly from Adam.
Right, so Noah's evidence was the past record of divine action. The unseen promise he was dealing with was the impending cosmic judgment, the flood.
God told him to build a massive waterborne vessel on completely dry ground.
And society paints that endeavor as absolute insanity, building an ark for up to 100 years while being mocked by your entire generation.
Yeah, this sounds crazy.
But with the context of the Genesis 5 living library, building the ark wasn't a psychotic break. It was the only logical response.
It was a rational, calculated response to historical data. Noah acted as a herald of righteousness, essentially presenting the evidence to a world that actively chose to ignore it.
Noah's obedience wasn't a leap in the dark. It flowed directly from the trust built by the track record handed down to him.
And this unbroken chain continues forward, because Noah lived until Abraham was 58 years old.
Wow, yeah.
Whether they ever met face to face is unknown, but they were contemporaries on the earth. Abraham had access to the shared, living memory of the flood, of the judgment, and of the massive physical rescue operation of the ark.
So when Yahweh comes to Abraham in Genesis 12 and says, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you," Abraham doesn't hesitate.
He packs up and leaves the advanced, comfortable civilization of Ur of the Chaldeans with absolutely no map.
Think of it like getting a stock tip from an insider who has flawlessly predicted every single market crash and boom for a century.
That's a great analogy.
If that person tells you to move your entire portfolio immediately, doing it isn't a gamble. It is basic financial logic. Abraham heard a voice that speaks with authority, and because he knew the historical track record, well, radical movement was the only rational response.
The source material also points out a vital contrast here with Nimrod.
Oh, right, Nimrod.
The historical record mentions Nimrod, who orchestrated the building of the Tower of Babel. Nimrod had access to the exact same historical data about the flood. He knew the track record.
But his response to the evidence was weaponized rebellion. He built a tower to actively defy the possibility of a future judgment.
Right, because evidence demands a verdict, but it doesn't force your hand. A jury can see all the proof and still make a corrupt decision. You still choose whether to submit in faith or rebel in pride.
That is so true.
So that brings us to the bridge. We've traced this Old Testament living library from Adam to Noah down to Abraham. But how does this unbroken chain of forensic evidence bridge the massive gap to the listener sitting here today?
Because we aren't sitting across the table from Adam, and we can't exactly interview Noah.
Exactly. So what do?
Well, we don't have Adam, but the fundamental structure of faith hasn't changed. The New Testament operates on the exact same mandate of cross-examined eyewitness evidence.
Look at the legal framing in Acts 4:20. The religious leaders command the apostles to stop speaking about Jesus.
And the apostles don't reply with a philosophical defense. They say, "We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard."
We see the exact same structural argument in 1 John 1. John opens his letter by emphasizing that they are declaring what they have heard, what they have seen with their own eyes, and what they have physically touched with their hands.
The apostles weren't pitching a new religious philosophy to the Mediterranean world. They were taking the stand in a courtroom.
Christian faith today isn't looking into an empty void, and it doesn't ask anyone to check their brain at the door.
No, it relies entirely on the tangible, cross-examined eyewitness accounts of the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
The text notes that Jesus stayed on earth for 40 days after rising from the dead. He didn't just ascend immediately.
He stayed specifically to provide undeniable proof. He ate fish with them. He let Thomas physically touch the scars in his hands and his side.
That 40-day period is the hypostasis. It is the elekos.
The faith of the modern believer is anchored backward in that historical, observable reality, which then provides the foundation to move forward into the unseen promises of the future.
This leads to the ultimate urgent challenge Indu Eek lays out for the modern believer.
Right, based on Romans 10.
He uses the framework found in the book of Romans, chapter 10. How can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them?
He challenges anyone listening to fundamentally shift how they operate in the world. We have to stop passing out passive invitations like just hoping people wander into a building and figure out the theology on their own.
We are called to be active forensic storytellers.
Because if faith requires evidence, the crucial question becomes, what evidence are you actually presenting to the people around you?
Indu challenges us to start keeping an evidence journal, a literal written record of the concrete track record and past deeds of providence in our own lives.
Because your memory of what has already been done is the fuel for your obedience when you were asked to step into the unseen.
We have a tendency to experience something profound, a rescue, a provision, a moment of undeniable clarity, and then a month later, we've completely forgotten it.
We lose the data. We just let it slip away.
Let me ask you directly as you listen to this. Are you hoarding your evidence like a sealed court file? Are you keeping all those moments of divine rescue, of answered prayer, of undeniable providence locked away in a private vault?
Or are you presenting your exhibits to the jury of the world?
The ancient texts present Yahweh as a creator who essentially says, examine my record. I have nothing to hide.
He wants the evidence cross-examined. He wants the story told.
We started this deep dive talking about that doctor's office and the x-ray machine. We want clean, visible lines. Society has told you for decades that faith doesn't have an x-ray, that it is just stepping off a cliff in the dark.
But we've seen today that faith is the x-ray?
Yes. It is the title deed. It is the forensic exhibit file. It is deeply rational, deeply historical, and deeply demanding of our action.
Which leaves us with one final thought to wrestle with. We talked about Adam being a living library, passing down oral history and physical memory to 7 generations.
Right.
Today, we live in a digital age. We capture everything. We have servers full of photos, texts, and AI-generated content. But what is the actual permanence of the evidence you are leaving behind?
That's a huge question.
If a future historian or your own great-great-grandchildren were to sift through your digital footprint 100 years from now, what would they find? Would they find a highly curated highlight reel of a distracted life?
Or would they find the raw, undeniable data of an evidence journal?
Would they find a documented track record of a faith that acted? Because right now, every choice you make is building the foundation of evidence that someone else will eventually have to stand on.
Evidence unseen.
Standing on the record. Everlasting King.
From Adam unto Jesus.
Creator King.
We walk by holy witness.
Faith is the title deed.
Faith is not stepping into darkness. Faith is stepping because light has already spoken. Adam saw, Noah believed, Abraham moved, the apostles testified. We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. Faith remembers, faith responds, faith acts.